Greetings, everyone. Let's get dangerous.
This is so good.
I know.
It feels so right.
It's Jake Ciely.
Opening our minds to new ideas. Kill him!
Who is that guy?
Your mama. You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in fantasy things of the range.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No. Burn.
Game on, you ducks. It is All in Fantasy. It is week 12. It is the ranking show. When having a good discussion today because we have the marvelous, wonderful, amazing Chris Harris at Harris Football. If you're not following him, I don't understand how, because you're probably half on this show because you probably heard me on Chris Harris's show, as he loves to have me on. But at Harris Football, if you haven't, rectify that. Listen to the podcast. Listen to the one that, as Chris always says, he wishes I had more time to be able to come on, is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to of his when he does the wraparound for what he saw video-wise, because we talk a lot about what we see on the field. And it's still one of I listen to it despite the fact I don't have time to come on and listen to it, Chris. So that just tells everybody how great it is.
Thank you very much. That is high praise. When someone who does this stupid job for a living says that they listen to what I do, that is really nice. So I appreciate that.
No, of course. One of the best in the business, and that's why he's on this week. So I thank him for taking time. And make sure, like I said, give him a follow. And we're going to jump right into it. And as Chris and I usually do when I have him on, it's a little bit different than like, oh, like I rank this person here. I rank this is more of like, why? And what does it actually mean for you? And like right off the top, Chris, a lot of people are already asking Anthony Richardson, the best game of his career. I even put you in the notes. I said, blah, 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 blah. Like we know. Like you watched. And you saw that he played better, but I think, and I don't want to speak 100% for you, so you can tell me if I'm crazy, but I think that we as in the public, and I'm hoping that you agree with me because that always makes me feel better, but there were still Anthony Richardson flaws in that game. There were still so what a shock that you agree with me on this. But I want to present this in the fact of like at the beginning of the season, we never asked Anthony Richardson, or wanted, I should say, Anthony Richardson to be a 70% completion artist, great in the pocket all the time. For fantasy, it was always just go out there and be mediocre because you're going to run so much that's all we need. The time sat, everybody's like, oh, this is such a smart decision. But for fantasy, Chris, what we saw, is it enough for you to immediately just go, you know what, I'm plugging them back in, especially because it's on a 16 bye? Or are you still a little hesitant saying it was a good matchup, tougher one this week? I'm not just saying, oh, the 2 weeks fixed everything.
Yeah, you summed up the roller coaster of emotions there pretty well. I haven't ranked 17th this week among quarterbacks, even with like Burrow and Allen on bye, because it was horrible into the last two drives last week against the Jets. Like I think the number they gave during the broadcast was in the first 20 minutes of the game, the Colts ran 20 times, mostly Jonathan Taylor. They were doing everything they could possibly do not to put anything on Anthony Richardson's shoulders in this return. And I mean, baby steps. You didn't see the incredible, insane, like my dude is 15 feet away and I still can't throw him a football. Like that wasn't there. So that's good. And probably you're right. Like he runs so well and is so likely to get in when he's on the goal line that all I need is him to be is like an adequate NFL quarterback so that his team doesn't bench him. And he had not been that good yet. And he wasn't really given the chance to do that through most of this game against the Jets. And then, I mean, the fumble wasn't really even on him. He just got hit. They dialed up a deep ball to Alec Pierce. Like sometimes you get hit. Do you see the play where he's deep in his own territory and he's getting sacked and he does the Will Levis where he's falling forward, getting sacked and just laterals it to Trey Sermon. And I mean, it could easily.
I legitimately, I was watching that and I went, oh no. Like that was actually my reaction.
Gasp. So it was a bad performance until the last two drives, but what do they say in baseball? Once you display a skill, you own a skill. Like the fact that he could string together those two good drives. The last one was like a hitch and go to Alec Pierce. He threw a drop it in the bucket against cover 2. It was really nice. And then he winds up scoring the rushing touchdown. You know, I think for me, it isn't enough for me to overcome the worry that I could get the 3-point game. If he
Right.
doesn't run in a touchdown and he's an absolute disaster against the Lions, the floor is too scary for me to rank him highly. But if you're in absolute chasing upside mode, I would understand why you would have him ranked higher than I do.
And I agree. So for like the context, I'm a little bit higher than you, but he's still in that teen range where I'm like, you know what? This rank is wrong. He's either going to be 5 or 20. Like there doesn't seem to be an in-between with him unless maybe he runs for 2 or touchdowns or something like that.
Yeah.
But generally overall agreement there. So another quarterback, I talked about Caleb Williams and the coaching change. And again, I put like blah, 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 blah. We know at this point, it's Wednesday when we're talking about this. So everybody's seen that the coaching change meant more quick outs, quicker time to throw, make your decision. Last week, when this was all happening in the coaching change, Chris, is like, I actually went on this podcast and I was like, if I'm replacing Jaylen Waddle, like, this is what I would do. It's like, I would do what they did with Jaden Daniels, and I would say, look, first read, if it's not there, run. First read, not there, run. Because Caleb, you can run, but this is the same thing he did in college. He doesn't like to run. He likes to run around and try to make a hero throw. They changed it mostly for 1 week, and they kept things a lot short for him, similar to Daniels earlier in the season. But another, similar to Anthony Richardson, was that one game enough for you to say, you know what? Now I can see the baby steps with Caleb Williams. They should have done it from week 1, but it's the middle of the season. But Caleb Williams over somebody in a tough matchup this week that you would consider starting, because more so, he's running. And like the one I want to throw out to you is like, where are you having the conversation of Matthew Stafford against the Eagles defense, which has now been, since their bye, pretty scary. And we know that he has 0 rushing upside. Is that a conversation you're even having with yourself?
Sure. Yeah. This is the Joe Burrow, Josh Allen bye week that's been looming for so long that you've had to have some sort of solution in mind if you've got those guys. And I have Burrow everywhere. I think a lot of people listen to my show have Burrow everywhere. So we're all kind of figuring out who. And I don't think it's outrageous at all to consider Richardson, Stafford, Drake May, Caleb Williams, all in the same basket. I wound up with Williams lowest of that group. But like, again, not outraged by the idea of chasing some degree of upside. I think this idea that now he runs, Jake, now, I mean, he never ran, but now after one game he runs, like maybe, the Minnesota's a different kind of challenge than Green Bay defensively. I'm not saying they're even like better, but they're going to bring more pressure. And so we'll see how Caleb deals with that, and maybe that gives him more opportunities to run and make us some easy money. But they certainly, like DJ Moore in that game last week, had 2 wide receiver screen in the first 2 possessions. He had 2 jet motions. I think in the first quarter he might have had 6 targets. They were all short. They were just trying to get the ball out of Caleb's hands and into DJ Moore's hands. We love that. That's a winning formula. It did look like a little better, a little simpler, but I don't know. I've seen a lot of fantasy quarterbacks go down against the Vikings defense. That's one where the faint of heart need not apply. I think I'm not applying on that one.
Real quick, and I didn't put this in the notes, but I know you watched. So did you come away having any more hope for any specific receiver? Because I actually got a little bit of a glimmer. I think to your point there, a lot of people might hear that and be like, oh, so we should have hope for DJ Moore. The usage, especially when Caleb was like under duress or third downs looking for a Dunze, it kind of feels like that's turned into his guy so far. Like of all 3, I felt a little bit better about a Dunze going forward. I
felt better about Moore.
Okay.
Although they threw it to him twice in the second half, so that wasn't so great. But one of them he fumbled, I think. To my way of thinking, there are times, weirdly, stupidly, in this offense where I can't tell whether it's Odunze or Keenan Allen who's caught it until he turns around
until they stand up.
Yeah, because like they're not using Odunze down the field at all, really,
right.
Occasionally. But I think you're right. That's a good observation for me. I agree that like possession-wise, like Odunze is kind of being turned into a possession receiver. That might be of necessity because of where this offense is and where Caleb Williams is. I'll never get mad if a big, strong, young receiver reminds me of Keenan Allen. Like Keenan Allen's freaking great when he was good, and I don't know, like there are moments even still where Allen looks fine. He had a big catch in this game that helped them get down to where they should have made the winning field goal. So I guess I didn't arrive with the conclusion that Odunze like got hiked in my ranks or anything, but I totally see your point, because there are times where, he should be more than a possession receiver, but that's kind of how they're treating him right now.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. So let's jump to running back, and one that has been struggling of late, but the volume's been there. Aaron Jones, volume all season long. And I put bell cow for everybody out there. I gave, Chris notes about what we're going to talk about. And I said put bell cow volume, and then I put worried in question marks. And the reason I put that is not so much even just his performance, but maybe, and again, another one, if you're seeing the same thing, this kind of backtracks to Lamar Miller for me. And I know you remember this, is Lamar Miller, those days, and everybody pounding the table in fantasy, like, give him more. Look how good he is. Give him 20 touches. Look how good he is. And then what happened when Lamar Miller got 20 touches? It was like, oh, he's putting an exact same performance just with 20 touches. Yeah. I kind of feel like that's Aaron Jones. And hey, what a surprise. Maybe the Packers knew how to use Aaron Jones. So it's kind of a twofold question, Chris, is that, are you worried of his recent 4-game stretch? And by last week, starting to see a little bit more Cam Akers, is this possibly a turnaround going forward where the lesser volume can get the better efficient Aaron Jones? And maybe this is a buying opportunity, because I know, look, he's going to be in the top 20, so you have to play him. So like saying whether or not you would rank him high, it's kind of irrelevant. I wanted to ask you more of like your worry level for Aaron Jones going forward.
I'm very worried about Aaron Jones. I'm not sure that it's so much because I think he's been ineffective or anything. I think he's hurt.
Okay.
The way he came in and out of that Titans game last week, his ribs don't seem right to me. We know that the prior week he left, carted off with a rib injury and returned to the game. So we were all like, okay, seems like we dodged that bullet. And then he starts this Titans game and he seems okay, gets a carry near the goal line, doesn't get in. This is late second quarter. The last drive of the second quarter for Minnesota, which was this big, long orchestral drive that was like double-digit plays, and Cam Akers was in for the entire drive and winds up catching the little naked boot for the touchdown.
Right.
And I didn't watch it live. I watched it after, like on Monday afternoon, and was thinking, okay, nobody told me that Cam Akers Aaron Jones was done. Like, what happened? And then I'm watching, and in the third quarter, sure enough, Aaron Jones is out there. First carry up the left there, takes a huge hit, stays down. His teammates are looking at him like, uh-oh. The announcers are like, uh-oh. He does leave. Cam Akers comes in. Actually, that's maybe when Akers got his receiving touchdown. But anyway, and I was like, wow, this is this. And then next series, Jones was back in there, but they kind of alternated from that point forward. And Minnesota at the end, they're up, they're winning, they've got the ball, they've covered the spread, they're all good. They could kneel on it, and they gave Aaron Jones 3 straight carries at the very end. I couldn't make any sense out of it at all, other than to say, I am, I think there's something going on with his ribs, and heaven knows we know that when Aaron Jones has something going on, he's very tough, but sometimes he's playing through something he shouldn't be playing through and gets hit again, and sometimes like it just can go funky. So like I recommended Cam Akers as an ad in pretty much all leagues, not necessarily to use because of last week's usage, but because all we need is 1 week where Aaron Jones is like, yeah, it hurts and I can't play until it gets fixed. And suddenly we get a month of Cam Akers, which I think would go pretty well. But like, I guess I don't worry too much about the like efficiency stuff. I think mostly it's that he's been hurt.
Okay. Then speaking of being hurt, and thank you for that transition there, is we got the potential return of Isiah Pacheco, at least from Andy Reid's standpoint. Sounds like he's going to come back this week. This is basically a question if he comes back. So the reason I say that, because like it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, but for my career, Chris, I've attacked these situations, and it's not 100%, but I feel like the majority of the time it's correct. And I'll just stick with something that works the majority of the time because we are trying to predict sports, is when an incumbent, and I put that kind of in quotes, of like Isiah Pacheco comes back and the replacement has been performing well and Kareem Hunt has been playing well and they activate him, I kind of go with the thought process of like, well, he's going to come back into the lead. It doesn't necessarily mean 90%, but he's coming back into the lead because it's why bring him back? Because you kind of don't have to. Like, wait a few more weeks. Like the T. Higgins, just wait a few more weeks because he's not. And that's when people weren't playing well for his replacement for the Bengals. So I said it to say, is I do think Pacheco will come back into the lead, but I don't think it's going to be 70% Pacheco. How are you attacking this, assuming Pacheco plays in Week 12? Avoid both? Do you have one higher than the other by clearly, or what's your thinking?
Well, Jake, I like to think of myself as an absolute coward, and for my initial ranks at harrisfootball.com, I just pretended Isiah Pacheco fell off the planet. It doesn't exist, because I just wanted an easy rank to start with. So I just have Kareem Hunt at like number 7. So let's move on. I think I agree with you. I had Andy Behrens on my show today, and I asked him the same question, and he's like, we don't know, it's usage. They don't tell us beforehand. We don't have any way of really delivering any more information than the viewers and listeners of your fine program currently have. Like, we're all just kind of guessing. But I do tend to assume that the incumbent stays the incumbent, and they don't do the thing where it's like, here's 5 carries just to get your feet wet, and we'll get you back in there next week. That's exactly what the Packers did with Aaron Jones last year. So it obviously isn't foolproof. But I think I'm with you. I would err on the side of Isiah Pacheco. You have a lot of teams on bye this week, and I would find it hard to believe you would have a way not to use Pacheco in most lineups. I have a lineup where I've had just like a lot of good luck with a lot of what were supposed to be mid-range running backs, and I have a lot of options, and I'm going to have to make a decision. How risky do I want to be? Do I want to take the shot that Andy Reid just goes, let's use him? It's such a good matchup against Carolina. Kansas City doesn't want to blow anybody out. They're not going to throw it 50 times no matter what. Like, they would love to win 27-10 and give their running backs 30 carries. That's who they are. So it's real hard for me not to use him. And I would choose him over Kareem Hunt, but I'm hoping that my cowardice wins for one more week.
Hey, it would make it easier for us.
It really would.
The next one, and I've done so many shows with Chris over the years, and I love all of them, so I kind of know where his answer is going. But in any case, people have listened to my podcast and haven't heard Chris to this point. Let me phrase this a very simple way for you. J.K. Dobbins, very bad matchup. We know how bad the Ravens are for running backs. How do you just treat bad matchups when a running back has been playing as well as Dobbins has, even with Edwards back?
Yeah, I think you're mostly using them. I would. It kind of does depend sometimes on where you drafted him. That kind of reflects on what else you have. Like, I have teams where Dobbins is my flex because I didn't have to take him in the first 5 or 6 rounds. So it's legit. Like, do I have other running backs that I would play over him at a flex or even an RB2 on a lot of teams? No. But there are going to be people out there who have kind of legit wide receiver options. And that's where I would go, okay, you could start thinking about matchup if you want a little bit, if it's close, if it's I don't know, Calvin Ridley or J.K. Dobbins. 2 very possible. There could be a lineup where you have those guys as your potential flexes. That's the tiebreaker where I would potentially use the worry over the Ravens' run defense. I think
Zay
mostly
Flowers on the other side. Sorry to jump in, but like to kind of throw one out to you. Zay Flowers on the other side versus J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I might do Calvin Ridley over J.K. Dobbins. I think I'd definitely do Zay Flowers. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Calvin Ridley's like a fair kind of tipping point to say maybe one way or the other. But no, I mean, you know me well enough to know that mostly I think running backs who are playing well in offenses that know how to use them are rare enough that I'm usually willing to go down with the ship. I also think maybe the Ravens' excellence against run games is a little overstated because they've been so easy to throw against mostly.
Yeah.
That, like, why run? You don't like the Bengals probably could have done whatever they wanted to in that Thursday night game we all watched, but they needed to catch up. Yeah, they needed to catch up, and they needed to against the Ravens, right? That was 2 Thursdays ago, and they just ran, and they just threw. But if they had decided to run, it might have worked also. I'm not trying to say it's a good matchup. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong in bringing up Dobbins, potentially scariness, but I think mostly you're probably using them.
Okay. Well, then I think, you'll agree that this matchup is worrisome. James Cook saved his day last week with 2 touchdowns, but it wasn't because of his rushing. It was just because of the touchdowns. The problem here is that it's not just Chuba Hubbard, which for how many weeks have people been like, I don't want to put Chuba Hubbard inside the top 15. It's like Chuba Hubbard's inside the top 15. But now we actually do have the official return, or debut, I should say, of Jonathan Brooks, and it's a really bad matchup. This is kind of more like where I will kind of ask your ranking is, what are you doing with Chuba Hubbard this week? Where is he in your ranks?
He's RB 26, both for standard and full PPR. So that is
The lowest you've had him this year?
Since, the very beginning of the year. I don't think I saw this coming, but like,
right.
If J.K. Dobbins is like running back, whatever, 15, 16, 17 this week, having Hubbard 26, think about it. There's 26 teams that are, going to be playing. Now there are a couple of teams like the Lions have a couple of guys ahead of him. I'm not calling Chuba Hubbard the worst possible starter on his team for fantasy, but he's close. And I got to say, it's way less about Jonathan Brooks and way more about the Chiefs. I try not to be like overreactive to matchup, but if there's one run defense I am absolutely petrified of, it is the Chiefs run defense.
I agree with you.
They have holes in the secondary. And you saw, like, especially they're thin there. They started having to use backup defensive backs against the Bills last week. It didn't go very well. But I am looking for a reason maybe not to use Chuba Hubbard. Jonathan Brooks, I don't think, Miles Sanders is out. So, like, whatever work Miles Sanders typically gets, that's how you can work in Jonathan Brooks. So that doesn't scare me as much. But, yeah, you can make the argument Hubbard's a pretty good receiving back, so how's he not benefiting no matter what the game flow? I get it. I feel like, again, if Dobbins has been your flex because of where you drafted him, then Hubbard really has been your flex before you drafted him. And so you probably do have other okay options, including maybe some wide receivers. And I think all the receivers we mentioned to this point would be ahead of Hubbard on a flex list for me.
I definitely agree with that, and I'll give you a toss-out then. Is not the lead running back of this team, but the one that people picked up off waivers could be an option. Both Buccaneers against the Giants over Chuba Hubbard. I'm assuming you have, given the fact that he's down at 26.
I do. I have, well, let me look at my own ranks. Do I have memorized? I have...
Don't you love that? For people, where did you... Like, hold on, I don't remember off the top of my head.
No, I don't remember off the top of my head. 19 and 20. Irving and Rashad White. I would use either one of them.
So real quick, the first wide receiver wasn't going to be this, but I just brought up the Giants game, so why not talk about it? We have Tommy DeVito. Yeah. Like
Meatball Tommy. You must have jerseys, right? You have many. You have like a shrine.
to Tommy. Actually, the jersey just says cutlets on it instead of like this.
What? Okay, here's how you could tell someone's really a Giant fan. What's his agent's name?
Oh, I have no idea. I told you I haven't been a Giants fan in years. I actually don't know I've seen his agent, but I actually don't. Right. And for everybody that might not see the YouTube, Chris shook his hands. I even said this to Nicole, my wife. It's like, this is how you know there's still like a 5% of me not letting go of the Giants is that I'm still rooting for them to have a top 2 pick, because I'm like, I can finally get back to the Giants, because as soon as they drafted Daniel Jones, I'm like, I'm out. I'm done with this team. I was like, to be fair, Chris, I gave him 1 year in case I was wrong about Daniel Jones, because I'm not perfect. But after that first year, I was like, nope, I'm done. Talk to me when he's gone. And then they signed the contract, and then that's when I was like, oh, I'm even more gone now. But anyway,
Sean Stellato. Sean Stellato. That's the agent.
That name doesn't even surprise me.
No. If you've seen a picture of Sean Stellato, bless his heart, you've seen it. You're a Giant fan. Stop talking to me, but go ahead.
It's just like, I'll pull out my Texans hat. Tommy DeVito, a quarterback. Malik Neighbors. And obviously Malik Neighbors hasn't even been the insane Malik Neighbors. People were going bananas. We're setting records those first couple weeks. He's going to be the best ever. But we kind of have a parallel, and I'm going to talk about this wide receiver with you next, is kind of like CeeDee Lamb with Cooper Rush. Is DeVito capable enough that we have to keep Neighbors in our lineup, or do you wait and see a game and say, you know what, there might be better wide receivers that I've picked up along the way? One I'll even throw into this conversation that we're going to talk about, as well as, like, I would see myself starting Juwan Jennings over Malik Neighbors.
Juwan Jennings, yeah. Juwan Jennings, I would start over Malik Neighbors, but that's because, again, I don't have my ranks memorized, but I have Juwan Jennings 10. So, like, okay. I'm very much aboard the Juwan Jennings train.
Don't you love it? He's a league winner, Chris. Don't you love that term?
He's great. Well, I've said this a bunch, and so I apologize for repeating myself, but the skill set wise, who Juwan Jennings reminds me of is Jacoby Myers. Just that non-exceptional athlete. Although watching him drag 3 tacklers for Seattle last week inside the red zone was pretty cool. Maybe he's not as non-exceptional as I thought, but he's not huge. He's not fast. He's not like an amazing leaper. He's not an incredible route runner. He's just sort of open all the time. And like, okay, yeah, when you have Brandon Ayuk, who is an exceptional athlete and a crazy deep threat and completely changes the way defenses play you, yes, I would be emphasizing Ayuk over a Jacoby Myers type every time, 10 times out of 10. But given that I don't, and given Debo, is he healthy? I don't know what's up with Debo. He's barely used. Jennings is, I love Jacoby Myers. I love that kind of player. Just open. Like, just give me a 9-yard pass every time I'm wide open. I would use him over Neighbors, but mostly I still have Neighbors inside my top 20. It is, I'm trying to let the rank of a talented kid be sticky in his case. If it goes bad, I mean, like, they're going to try to run against Tampa, and Tampa's going to play that, cover 2 with the linebackers back, and they're going to let you throw short stuff. And there's an argument, I guess, that Wan'Dale Robinson benefits and gets 7 or 8 targets, and then you start using him. I don't think I could go there. I don't want to use Tommy Cutlett's ancillary Tommy Veal Parmesan.
Not throwing for 200 yards. That doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah, exactly. But my thing is like, great. There's some logic that Wan'Dale is a good option to be catching those 2-yard screens against safeties that are way back. Cool. You know who's better at that is Malik Neighbors. So I would hope that the plan would be to just get it to him really quickly. For as long as any of that lasts, once Tampa's up 3 touchdowns, maybe then things start changing a little bit. But let's face it, Tommy DeVito's not out there to win games. he's not being he's out there to make sure Daniel Jones doesn't have to get any insurance money. That's the bottom line.
You know what the funny thing is? And you saw the player like, oh, we had no idea this was coming. And like, now they're like, Brian Daboll's playing for his safety next year as the head coach to come back and not get fired by showing the rest of the season that he can win. I'm like, no, he's safe. This is the front office doing everything they can to make it not clear that they're tanking. This is like, oh, his job is on the line. No, it's not. You want to lose the games.
I mean, if it's on the line, it was on the line regardless of what's going to happen.
Like,
the rest
it was
of the year.
already. Yeah,
exactly. Like, I can see a world where it's the Giants. Like, the GM should get fired. So like, in any other world, if it wasn't the Giants, the GM and the coach would both be gone. But because it's the Giants, and they probably won't fire the GM because it's the Giant way, and we're loyal. Nobody else is loyal. I think the GM will be safe, so we'll find out about Daboll. Yeah.
Let me ask, so real quick as a complete side, when you're saying Juwan Jennings reminds you of, maybe I can get you on board with mine. I called them less thick Anquan Bolden.
Well, I guess, yeah, a little, young Anquan. But the thing is, young Anquan was a little more of a downfield guy than Jennings.
He was.
Yeah.
That's why it's tough to sometimes find these. So,
yeah.
But let's continue this conversation kind of in a different way with the CeeDee Lamb. This is actually going to compare to this topic, but also the quarterbacks. The first week with Cooper Rush, we all know, was abysmal. I don't know if you saw the stat that I put out, Chris, because it was insane to me, is that Cooper Rush he set history in his first game. No quarterback before him had attempted at least 20 passes, completed at least 10, and had lower than 4 yards per completion. He had 3.5. He set history. He's the first before the merger, before the Super Bowl era of all time of forever. He's the lowest ever. But then it was a good game. So this is kind of like, is everything just forgiven? Is everything just fine with CeeDee Lamb? It's like, you know what? Lamb is too good. We remember 2022, despite the fact that team was so much better talent-wise. But everything's fine because the volume is going to just volume, and then you'll have your good games where he is top 10, but at worst case, he's 25.
Everything's not forgiven. He was the first receiver taken. There were some people say, not you and me, but some people saying take him number 1 overall.
Right.
So everything's not forgiven. I called him, we did a trade deadline special a week ago Friday, and I called him one of my buy lows. I would have bought him coming off that horrible game against the Eagles. And this one, against Houston was probably more like what I would expect. There's going to be blood on it. It's going to be ugly. He's going to be mad half the time and making faces at the camera because the ball placement wasn't good and he had to drop it or get hit or something. There was the deep one where he had to commit offensive pass interference to have the ball not be intercepted because it was, he was open on the outside. He throws to the inside. Cooper Rush stinks. He's not a starting NFL quarterback. Mac Jones wishes he was Cooper Rush. He's okay. he can keep the trains running on time. So I think you're okay with Lamb, as you should be thinking of him in the wide receiver 2 range more than 1. But that mostly just still means you start him, and it's all well and good for me to make a pronouncement right now, Jake. But a bad week against the Commanders, we might be coming back here and saying 2 out of 3 bad weeks. That other one was a fluke. I don't want to use him at all. Like, the good thing is we don't have to set our lineups for week 17 right now.
Fortunately.
So, for now, I would be using him. Let's see how it goes. Because it's not Dak Prescott, he's burned out a lot of the like benefit of the doubt. And if he has a few bad weeks in a row, we could be thinking of him like we thought of Stephon Diggs at the end of last year, where it's like, okay, now you can't use him anymore. It's just been too long.
Well, I'm so glad you gave me that perfect transition. It's like you do this for a living, Chris. This next wide receiver, there's actually 2. I'm going to jump down to these. There's 2 that could be in this conversation of saying, you know what, it's been too long. The second more than the first. We'll save the second and get out of here on that guy. But The first has, at least since their bye, been pretty bad. It's the easy comparison for a lot of people with DeVonta Smith has always been, it's Deshaun Jackson. You remember Deshaun Jackson on the Eagles, just because it's like an easy out for that one. But if you wanted to stick with the Deshaun Jackson comparison, this has been the end of the career bad Deshaun Jackson since the bye. It's been a lot more bad games than a lot more usable games. Granted, there's a lot of things going on with the Eagles, but part of it is that they don't need them as much. They have Saquon Barkley. They have all these, like, Dallas Goedert's actually healthy. Are you concerned that DeVonta Smith, let's put it this way, if somebody was still treating DeVonta Smith as top 25 for you and your trade deadline is next week, which is for a lot of people, would you get away from him at this point? Like, are you concerned enough to say, you know what, DeVonta Smith might not be, we don't have to set our lineup, but he might not be in my week 16 lineup with the way he's playing?
I think he's more a hold because I think you're not going to get any kind of real value for him when people look at the game log. So probably for me, more of a hold. But to your point, maybe more of a matchup dependent week by week kind of player. I hope I have some alternatives that I down the stretch that I could feel better about, because I am having to rely on a big play more than it feels comfortable. Let's face it, it's not DeVonta.
Can I throw something out to you?
Sure.
Would you take any of the 3, because they have a bad schedule, and yes, now there are 3 that have become involved. Would you take any of the 3 Browns receivers over DeVonta Smith?
I would not.
Okay. I think that's a good idea for people to.
Yeah, I'm too scared of Jameis. I mean, if this is all it took for Jameis to stay a quarterback in the league, he would still be in Tampa Bay. This is the same act he's been doing his whole life. I'm not going to be shocked if we see DTR at some point if this is how he's going to play. I would go. I mean, we saw DTR for a play against New Orleans, but then they quickly put Jameis back in. What I was going to say about DeVonta Smith, I think it's way less a DeVonta Smith problem and way more a Jalen Hurts problem. And everyone last Thursday got to see why I crow about this stuff, which is Jalen Hurts has not been a very good quarterback. Even through this win streak, there are times where you go, what are you even doing, man? He's one of those dudes who A.J. Brown's man falls down, is standing there wide open. Jalen Hurts doesn't set his feet, throws on the run, and whips it out of bounds. Like, he's not getting benched, but that's the kind of thing that makes them say, okay, here's Saquon, you can have some more carries. And, that's a tie game or, very close until the fourth quarter. And then they go, okay, Saquon, go win the game. And he does. It's, Hurts is his own conversation because he's got the foolproof rushing touchdowns that hopefully most weeks you get one and it at least gives you a floor. I still worry that, he's someone I might trade away just because I hate that idea that I have to go into my fantasy semifinals and, I guess I hope Jalen Hurts, falls in from the 1 yard line, but that's not what you asked. I think Smith is more than just a Deshaun Jackson deep ball artist. He's really good at that, but I think he runs pretty precise routes.
Good, yes.
He gets manned up a lot because AJ Brown's the one you have to take away. It's that Chris Godwin theory where Godwin's always open in the middle of the field because Mike Evans just dictates a lot of safety coverage. But the worry is real. Who cares the reasons? Like, I'm giving you all these reasons not to blame DeVonta. Who cares whose fault it is? You're right. It's been fallow. I like this matchup against the Rams. I think you can move the ball against the Rams. I saw the Patriots receivers get open against the Rams. I think it's all systems go for these Eagle receiving weapons in this game. And if it doesn't work out in this one, I'm certainly going to reconsider.
All right, then before we get out of here, so nothing makes me happier. So for everybody out there also, like I don't have time, is actually a lot of times when I'm listening to Chris's podcast, it's in the background as I'm working on Tuesday mornings. And he knows because he loves my waiver column, which is probably one of the highest praise I could have, that he loves my waiver column.
I love it. Look at it every week.
You might have seen the Jaylen Waddle worry level. And I love the fact of what I did in a much shorter version than you did, is I'm listening to the podcast and I'm like, oh man, this feels good. I'm seeing the same thing Chris said. Yeah. Oh, this is good. Like that. It's just such a confidence boost when you're like, man, I'm on the same page. I'm not even going to go into Jaylen Waddle. I'm just going to, because I know your answer because I listened to your podcast. Jaylen Waddle worry level from what you've seen, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's just this offense hasn't been looking his way. There's a lot more to it. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think Jaylen Waddle became a worse player. And I don't think he has to make a play down the field or else it's just no good. Like, he's a talented all-field player who definitely got paid like it. The problem is that Miami's offense isn't the same offense, and it's because I think defenses have absolutely just changed the way they defend. These past couple of weeks, it's been so stark that anytime Tua makes a play, that something exciting happens for that Dolphins offense, he runs around for 5 seconds. It's the exact opposite of last year. The whole point of last year was it was foolproof, and people were ragging on Tua because anybody could do it, because all he would do is 5 steps, hit his back foot, 3 guys are wide open, and he's like spoiled for choice. He just throws it, and the person runs 80 yards. That is not happening any longer. I don't think that's because Tua is bad. I don't think that's because Mike McDaniel got stupid. I think the NFL figured out the safeties have to be back, and we always have to have an extra guy leaning Tyreek Hill's way. If the second Tyreek Hill runs a pattern beyond 7 yards, there's always a second person there, because otherwise that's the read. And it's just convincing the Dolphins to take what the defense has given them and go short. And when that first read is taken away, Tua isn't as good a player. He's really not the quarterback you want doing the Matthew Stafford stuff, the off schedule, off platform, running around. Wow, how did he do that? He's been okay at it. He's made some plays. He's also fumbled twice the last 2 weeks because he's running around like a ding dong with the one hand on the football. But he's definitely made some plays. And so, like, Tyreek stays in your lineup and the running back stays in your lineup, but ancillary weapons just don't need to be started the way they were when this offense was functioning differently. And we'll see. Like, I don't think Mike McDaniel has figured out how to combat the hyper, I don't want to say conservative because it's like deep on the back end, but then a lot of pressure into his face. I don't think McDaniel has exactly figured out what he wants to do with that given to his skill set. And until he does, I don't think Waddle is in too many lineups. I don't think any ancillary weapon. I don't think Jonnu Smith was lucky last week. I mean, the last touchdown for Jonnu Smith was garbage time. That was you busted coverage.
I'm
where
not
like
counting that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you don't. He doesn't. If you scored it in a fantasy league, you have to take it off your points. Bottom line is, yes, we agree. Miami's offense just not the same. It's not an elite environment, and you don't have to strain to use the ancillary guys.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Much more succinct version on but more in depth with Harris. And look, make sure, please, every single day he's got a podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to it. Harris Football, you can find it everywhere. Go give it 5 stars too. Like, give him, rate and review that thing when you subscribe. At Harris Football. Anything else you want to tell people about before we get out of here?
No, it was great to be on. I'm so lucky to get to be a guest on your show. Honestly, like we for years you've been coming on mine, and I haven't guested on yours too many times, but your format changed, and I'm a big fan. And so the fact that I get to talk to you in your arena is awesome. That's not a joke about your waiver column. It's the best that exists in the world. It is simply the best. It's the first starting point that every Tuesday, that's what I look at. So I hope people are subscribing to The Athletic because it's really good.
It couldn't be nicer to be said, and not from like a lot of clout behind that compliment. So I appreciate it, Chris. But hopefully my clout's enough. If you haven't followed Chris, please do. And let's see, maybe I don't know. We got like 1, 2, 3. Maybe before the end of the season. If not, we might have to do an off-season get together. But I'll definitely have you back at some point because it's too good. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me. It was really fun.
Thank you.